What if I told you that some of the most beautiful, most productive, and most low-maintenance plants you can grow do not need a single handful of soil to thrive? No potting mix, no garden beds, no compost, no muddy hands. Just water, light, and a container. And in many cases, plants that grow faster, look cleaner, and need less attention than anything you are currently growing in soil. Most people discover this by accident. They cut a stem of pothos or mint and drop it in a glass of water on the kitchen windowsill, meaning to pot it up later. Weeks pass, the cutting not only survives, it grows new leaves, puts out new roots, and looks genuinely happy. And somewhere in that moment, the question arrives, what if I just left it there? Stay with me, because plant number 30 is one most people have walked past 100 times without ever realizing it spends its entire life growing between water and land, and it is one of the most quietly beautiful plants this entire list has to offer. Drop your country in the comments right now and tell me, have you ever grown a plant in water before? What happened? I want to know where this community is starting from. Plant 1. Pothos. If there is one plant that belongs at the very top of this list, it is pothos. Not because it is the most dramatic or the most unusual, but because it is the most forgiving, the most genuinely foolproof water plant available to any beginner. Pothos produces roots so readily from its stem nodes that a cutting placed in water will typically show the first white root tips within 5 to 7 days. Those roots continue developing into a dense, vigorous root system that supports active growth for months and, with occasional liquid fertilizer, indefinitely. The trailing green vines that make pothos popular in soil, those long, heart-shaped leafed stems that cascade from shelves, perform exactly the same way in a clear glass vase with the added visual bonus of the white root system visible below the waterline. Take a cutting just below a node, the small raised bump where a leaf attaches to the stem. Strip the lower leaves so no foliage sits below the waterline, which would rot and cloud the water. Place in clean glass container in bright indirect light. Change the water every 1 to 2 weeks to prevent the bacterial buildup that clouds the water and stresses the roots. Add a few drops of liquid houseplant fertilizer every 4 to 6 weeks. One thing beginners get wrong is using tap water with high chlorine or fluoride content directly. Both chemicals accumulate in the leaf tips and cause the yellowing and browning that makes lucky bamboo look neglected. Either use filtered water or allow tap water to sit uncovered for 24 hours before using it, which allows the chlorine to off-gas naturally. Over time, a well-maintained pothos in a clear glass vase becomes a permanent architectural feature in a room. Unlike a cut flower arrangement that must be replaced, a well-cared-for lucky bamboo display continues growing and improving for years. Plant 2. Lucky bamboo. Lucky bamboo is one of the most widely recognized water plants in the world, sold in glass vases in homes, offices, and restaurants across nearly every country. And despite its name, it is not bamboo at all. It's Dracaena sanderiana, a member of the asparagus family native to Central Africa, where it grows in consistently moist, water-adjacent conditions. What makes lucky bamboo exceptional for water growing is the complete versatility of its root system. The plant evolved in consistently moist conditions, and its roots adapt completely to permanent water immersion without the oxygen stress that kills most terrestrial plants in waterlogged conditions. Dracaena releases a specific protein called aquaporin at higher concentrations under water immersion, a molecular water channel protein that regulates the movement of water and dissolved minerals through root cells, allowing the plant to maintain cellular hydration and nutrient uptake even in a standing water environment. Grow lucky bamboo in a vase of clean water, changing it every 2 weeks. Keep 2 to 3 inches of water above the base of the stems at all times. Bright indirect light. Direct sun yellows the stems quickly. A few drops of liquid houseplant fertilizer monthly keeps the foliage a deep, rich green. One thing beginners get wrong is using tap water with high chlorine or fluoride content directly. Both chemicals accumulate in the leaf tips and cause the yellowing and browning that makes lucky bamboo look neglected. Either use filtered water or allow tap water to sit uncovered for 24 hours before using it, which allows the chlorine to off-gas naturally. Over time, a well-maintained pothos in a clear glass vase becomes a permanent architectural feature in a room. Unlike a cut flower arrangement that must be replaced, a well-cared-for lucky bamboo display continues growing and improving for years. Plant 3. Philodendron. Philodendron is the close relative of pothos that most people have not yet tried in water, and it deserves exactly the same treatment. The heart-leafed philodendron with its deep green, glossy, heart-shaped foliage produces roots from stem nodes with the same readiness as pothos and thrives indefinitely in a water environment with minimal care. Cut a stem with 2 to 3 leaves and at least one visible node. Remove any leaves that would sit below the water surface. Place in clean water in bright, indirect light. The roots that develop in water are specifically adapted to the aqueous environment. They grow longer, more branching, and paler than the soil roots the same plant would produce. These water-adapted roots are called hydroponic roots, and they have a thinner, more permeable cell wall that allows faster mineral absorption directly from the water. Water change every 2 weeks. Liquid fertilizer every 4 to 6 weeks. Philodendrons in water grow slightly more slowly than their soil counterparts, but they are virtually disease-free in the aquatic environment. The fungal root pathogens that cause so many houseplant problems in soil cannot establish in a regularly changed, well-maintained water container.
Spider plant. Spider plants are the parent plants everyone knows, those arching rosettes of green and white striped foliage that produce long hanging runners tipped with baby plantlets. And those baby plantlets, cut from the runner and placed in water, root faster and more reliably than almost anything else on this indoor list. Spider plants are native to tropical and southern Africa, where they grow in conditions that range from moist stream banks to relatively dry rocky outcrops. Their roots are succulent, thick, white, and moisture-storing, which makes them well-suited to water growing. A baby plantlet placed in a small glass of water will produce visible root tips within a week and a fully functional root system within 3 to 4 weeks. What makes spider plant unusual on this list is what NASA research identified in the 1980s and what subsequent studies have continued to confirm. It is one of the most effective air-purifying houseplants available, removing formaldehyde, carbon monoxide, and xylene from indoor air with measurable efficiency. A spider plant in a water vase on a desk or windowsill is both a living display and a functional air filter. One thing beginners get wrong is leaving the long stem of the runner attached to the plantlet while rooting it in water. Remove the runner cleanly at the base of the plantlet. It serves no function once the plantlet is separated from the mother plant and can introduce rot into the water if left. Plant 5. Tradescantia, wandering dude. Tradescantia is the water-growing plant that produces the most dramatic visual results in the shortest amount of time. A cutting placed in water in strong indirect light can produce new root growth within 48 hours and new leaf growth within a week. In a clear glass container, the root development is so fast and so visible that it becomes almost a horticultural experiment in real time. The varieties with purple undersides, particularly Tradescantia zebrina with its silver and green striped upper surface and deep purple-red underside, are the most visually striking in a water display. The color contrast between the foliage and the developing white roots below the waterline creates a display that is genuinely more interesting than the same plant in a pot. Tradescantia roots produce abundant lateral root hairs quickly in water, fine hair-like projections from the main root axis that massively increase the surface area available for water and mineral absorption. These root hairs are visible to the naked eye in a clear glass container and create a feathery, almost cloud-like appearance around the main root stems that is genuinely beautiful in its own right. One thing beginners get wrong is placing Tradescantia in water in low light. This plant needs bright, indirect light to maintain its foliage color in a water environment. In low light, the purple undersides fade to green, the silver marking becomes dull, and the growth slows dramatically. Give it the brightest indirect light available, and the color intensifies rather than fade. Plant 6. Chinese Evergreen, Aglaonema. Chinese evergreen is the water plant for anyone who has a low-light indoor space and wants a genuinely beautiful display. Aglaonema is one of the most light-flexible houseplants in existence. It performs in conditions ranging from bright indirect light all the way to the kind of dim ambient light that most other plants refuse to grow in. Aglaonema stems are thick and naturally moisture retentive, which makes them well suited to water growing. A stem cutting placed in water roots reliably and maintains its striking variegated foliage, green, silver, pink, red, or cream patterned, depending on the variety, in the water environment. The key with Aglaonema in water is starting from a cutting rather than attempting to transition a mature soil-grown plant. Soil roots and water roots are physiologically different. Soil roots have a thicker, air-adapted cell wall structure, while water roots have thinner, more permeable walls. A plant moved from soil to water must grow an entirely new root system, which stresses it severely. A cutting started in water grows the correct root type from the beginning. One thing beginners get wrong is using cold tap water directly. Aglaonema is a tropical plant, and root cell function is impaired by cold water. Allow water to reach room temperature before changing the container, especially in winter.
Plant 7. Impatiens. Impatiens in water is one of the most surprisingly effective combinations on this indoor list, and one that most gardeners never try because impatiens is so deeply associated with soil-based bedding plant culture. A stem cutting of impatiens, 5 to 6 inches long, with the lower leaves removed, placed in water, roots within 10 days and continues producing its characteristic small, flat flowers in pink, red, white, salmon, or purple, even in the water environment. Impatiens needs more light than most other plants on this indoor list. It is a flowering plant, and flower production requires photosynthetic energy that low light cannot provide. A bright windowsill with several hours of morning sun or a position under a grow light gives it the energy to keep flowering. Change the water weekly and add a very dilute liquid fertilizer every 2 to 3 weeks to support flowering rather than just vegetative growth. One thing beginners get wrong is taking cuttings that include the growing tip at the top of the stem. A cutting with the growing tip intact diverts the plant's energy upward into new leaf growth rather than downward into root development. Pinch the growing tip when placing the cutting in water. This redirects energy into root production and ultimately produces a denser, more floriferous display. Plant 8. Peace lily. Peace lily in water is a display that looks like it belongs in a florist's window. The broad, deep green leaves and elegantly shaped white spathes emerging from a clear glass vase filled with visible roots is one of the most architecturally beautiful indoor water plant arrangements available. Peace lily evolved in the tropical rainforests of Central and South America, where it grows in consistently moist, sometimes waterlogged soil at the forest floor. Its root system is naturally adapted to oxygen-limited, high-moisture conditions, which is exactly what a water vase provides. Transitioning a peace lily from soil to water requires washing all the soil from the roots completely, allowing the roots to hang freely in the water, and supporting the plant at the container neck so the crown and foliage remain above the waterline. After the initial transition period of 2 to 3 weeks, during which the plant may droop slightly as it adjusts, a peace lily in clean water with liquid fertilizer added monthly and water changed fortnightly performs reliably, producing new leaves and, in adequate light, continuing to bloom.
One thing beginners get wrong is allowing the water level to reach the crown, the point where the stems meet the base of the plant. The crown must stay above the waterline at all times. Only the roots should be submerged. A crown sitting in water rots quickly and ends the plant. Over time, a peace lily in a tall, clear glass vase becomes one of the most striking permanent indoor displays available. The visible root system below, the glossy foliage above, and the occasional white flower are a combination that looks expensive and considered and costs almost nothing to maintain. Plant 9. Coleus. Coleus is the color plant on this indoor water list. Where most water-grown cuttings are predominantly green, Coleus offers foliage in combinations of red, burgundy, lime green, gold, orange, pink, and near black, often in multiple colors on a single leaf, that make even a single cutting in a small glass container a dramatic visual statement. Coleus roots readily from stem cuttings in water, typically within 7 to 14 days, and maintains its foliage color intensity in a water environment, provided it receives adequate light. The vibrancy of the foliage color is directly proportional to the light intensity the plant receives. In a sunny windowsill, Coleus in a glass of water is breathtaking. In a dim interior, the same plant produces faded, washed-out color. Change the water every week. Coleus is slightly more sensitive to bacterial buildup in water than the other plants on this indoor list. Add a dilute liquid fertilizer every 3 to 4 weeks to support continuous foliage production, rather than just vegetative growth. One thing beginners get wrong is placing Coleus in direct sun, thinking more light means more color. Direct, harsh sun bleaches Coleus foliage rather than intensifying it. The colors fade toward pale yellow and pink regardless of variety. The ideal position is the brightest indirect light available, away from direct afternoon sun.
Plant 10. Begonia. Cane-stemmed begonias, including angel wing varieties, adapt beautifully to water growing and produce some of the most ornate foliage available in any indoor water display. A 6-inch stem cutting from a cane begonia, with the lower leaves removed and at least one node at the base, roots in water within 10 to 21 days. Begonia leaves, often asymmetric, sometimes metallic sheen, frequently spotted or patterned in silver, create a visual contrast with the developing root system below the waterline that is genuinely beautiful in a clear glass container. Wax begonias, the compact, rounded variety most commonly sold as bedding plants, also root and grow in water, producing a continuous display of small flowers in pink, red, or white above the waterline. One thing beginners get wrong is attempting to root Rex begonia leaves in water rather than stem cuttings. Rex begonias, the large, dramatically patterned varieties, are propagated from leaf cuttings in soil or a damp medium, not water. Starting with the wrong begonia type produces frustrating non-results. Plant 11. Sweet potato vine, ornamental. This is the plant that stops people mid-sentence the first time they see it growing in water. A sweet potato, an actual sweet potato from the grocery store, or an ornamental sweet potato vine tuber suspended over a jar of water with toothpicks, half submerged, produces some of the most vigorous, prolific, visually spectacular growth of anything on this entire indoor list. Within 3 to 4 weeks of placement in water, a sweet potato tuber produces abundant shoots from its eyes, the same growth points that cause grocery store sweet potatoes to sprout in the pantry, along with a root system that fills the jar with white branching roots. The shoots become trailing vines that can reach 2 to 3 feet in length in a single season, producing heart-shaped or deeply lobed leaves depending on the variety. Ornamental sweet potato vine varieties, Blackie with its near-black, deeply cut leaves, Marguerite with its heart-shaped lime green foliage, and Tricolor with its green, white, and pink variegated leaves are the most visually dramatic choices for water displays. One thing beginners get wrong is using a sweet potato that has been refrigerated for a long time. Cold-stored sweet potatoes often have desiccated eye buds that do not sprout reliably. Choose a fresh, firm sweet potato with visible eye buds and room temperature storage history for the best results. Plant 12. Dumb cane, Dieffenbachia.
Dumb cane is the large, bold-leafed tropical plant known from offices and hotel lobbies, those broad cream and green patterned leaves on thick stems that fill a space with genuinely tropical presence. And in water, a stem cutting of Dieffenbachia produces exactly that presence without a pot or potting mix in sight. Dieffenbachia stems are thick, moisture-storing, and naturally adapted to humid, water-adjacent forest conditions. A stem section, even one without leaves attached, just a section of bare stem with at least 2 nodes, placed horizontally in a shallow dish of water, will produce both roots and new shoots from its dormant buds within 3 to 4 weeks. The name dumb cane comes from the calcium oxalate crystals in the plant's sap, which cause temporary numbness and swelling in the mouth and throat if ingested. Handle with gloves when cutting and keep away from children and pets. One thing beginners get wrong is placing the cutting in a container that is too deep, allowing the entire stem section to be submerged. Only the lower node needs to be in water. The rest of the stem should be above the waterline, where it can breathe and produce new growth in the correct upright orientation. Hoya, the wax plant, named for the waxy texture of its thick, succulent-like leaves, is the last in this indoor group and in some ways the most rewarding over time. Hoya produces roots slowly in water compared to pothos or trachanstania, but the root system it develops is robust. The leaves it maintains are some of the most attractive of any trailing houseplant, and the occasional waxy, star-shaped flower clusters, produced in some varieties even in water-grown specimens, are among the most beautiful flowers in the indoor plant world. Hoya is a natural semi-epiphyte. It grows on trees in Southeast Asian and Australian rainforests, with its roots attached to bark surfaces that cycle between wet and dry as rainfall comes and goes. That background makes it more tolerant of water immersion than a typical terrestrial plant. The correct approach is partial immersion. Only the lower stem and developing root system should be in water, with the main stem and foliage above the waterline. One thing beginners get wrong is giving up on Hoya in water too quickly. The first 2 to 3 weeks after placing a cutting in water often show no visible progress. This is normal. Hoya roots are cautious. By week 4 or 5, the first small root tips appear, and the plant begins growing visibly from that point.
Plant 14. Mint. Mint is the gateway edible plant for water growing, the one that most people try first, succeed with immediately, and then wonder why they ever bothered with soil for this particular herb. A stem cutting of any mint variety, spearmint, peppermint, apple mint, chocolate mint, placed in a glass of water on a sunny windowsill, produces visible root growth within a week and new leaf growth within 2 weeks. Mint roots adapt completely to a permanent water environment. A cutting that has been growing in water for 6 to 8 weeks develops a dense, vigorous root system that supports continuous new leaf production from the growing tips. Harvest by pinching the newest leaves from the tips. This simultaneously provides you with fresh mint and triggers branching from the node below the cut, producing 2 new shoots where there was 1. Over weeks, a single water-grown mint cutting becomes a dense, multi-stemmed plant in its glass container. Change the water every 5 to 7 days. Mint is more sensitive to bacterial buildup in water than most of the plants on this list because of the aromatic oils in its tissue, which leach slightly into the water and create a growth medium for bacteria faster than a neutral-tasting plant would. One thing beginners get wrong is harvesting too much at once from a water-grown mint plant. A single water cutting is a compact plant with limited leaf mass. Harvest lightly and frequently rather than heavily and occasionally. Plant 15. Basil. Basil in water is one of the most satisfying kitchen windowsill projects available and a direct solution to one of the most universal frustrations in herb gardening, which is the supermarket basil plant that collapses within days of purchase. Those supermarket basil plants are grown at very high density, dozens of seedlings per pot, in conditions optimized for visual impact rather than long-term health. They are severely root-bound, nutrient-depleted, and designed for a short retail life rather than continued home growing.
The moment you transfer individual stems from that pot into separate glasses of water, everything changes. The stems root within 5 to 10 days and begin producing new growth that is noticeably more vigorous and healthier than anything the original crowded pot was producing. Basil in water does best with a minimum of 6 hours of direct sunlight daily. It is the most light-demanding plant in this edible group and will not produce the aromatic oil concentration that makes it worth growing without strong light. Harvest by cutting stems just above a pair of leaves. Each cut above a pair of leaves produces 2 new stems from the node below the cut, doubling the productive stem count with every harvest cycle. One thing beginners get wrong is allowing basil to flower. The moment flower buds appear at the growing tip, the plant transitions from leaf production to seed production, and leaf quality drops sharply. Remove every flower bud the moment it appears. Plant 16. Green onions and scallions. Place the white root end of a scallion, the part that usually goes in the bin, in ½ inch of water in a small glass. Within 24 hours in warm conditions, the green tops begin growing. Within a week, you have fresh green onion tops ready to harvest from what was kitchen waste a few days ago. This is arguably the fastest, easiest, and most immediately useful water growing project in this entire list. The regrowth mechanism is straightforward. The scallion bulb base contains the meristematic tissue that drives all above-ground growth. As long as that basal zone is intact and in contact with water, it continues producing new green growth from the same energy reserves it uses in the ground. A single glass with 4 to 6 scallion bases can supply a household's green onion needs for salads, soups, stir-fries, and garnishes for weeks. Harvest by pinching the green tops above the base, leaving the basal zone intact. The plant regrows from the same base repeatedly until the stored energy in the bulb is depleted, typically after 3 to 4 harvests. Replace with fresh bases, and the cycle continues indefinitely. One thing beginners get wrong is placing scallion bases in too much water. They need just enough water to keep the base moist, ½ inch to 1 inch maximum. Submerging the entire base rots it rather than regrowing it. Plant 17. Celery. Celery regrowth in water is one of those kitchen counter projects that feels like a magic trick the first time it works. The base of a store-bought celery, the flat, multi-stemmed base that is normally discarded, placed cut side up in a shallow dish of water, begins producing new growth from its center within 3 to 5 days. New growth appears as small pale yellow-green shoots emerging from the cut center of the base, which gradually green up as they grow toward the light above. After 2 to 3 weeks of water growing, the celery base can be transplanted into soil if you want to grow a full celery plant, or you can continue in water and harvest the young, tender inner leaves that continue producing as a cut-and-come-again salad green. One thing beginners get wrong is expecting full stalks of celery to regrow from the water base. The water regrowth produces leaves, not full stalks. For full stalks, the base must be transplanted into soil after the initial water rooting phase. Watercress. Watercress is the only plant on this edible list that is genuinely, fully, natively aquatic, a plant that grows in and around running water naturally and that produces its most nutritious and most flavorsome growth precisely in the water environment that mimics its native habitat. It's native to Europe and Asia, where it grows along the edges of streams and springs in clean, cool, moving water. Watercress is one of the most nutritionally dense leafy vegetables available, high in vitamin C, vitamin K, calcium, and a group of glucosinolate compounds that have been studied for their anti-inflammatory properties in peer-reviewed research. Grow watercress by placing stem cuttings in a jar of clean, room-temperature water in a cool, bright position. Change the water daily or every other day. Watercress needs fresher, more frequently changed water than most of the plants on this list because it naturally grows in flowing water, and stagnant conditions create bacteria growth faster than its tissue tolerates. One thing beginners get wrong is growing watercress in warm conditions. It's a cool water plant. In warm rooms in summer, it bolts rapidly, producing bitter leaves and flower stems. A cool kitchen or a north-facing windowsill produces the most tender, most flavorful growth.
Plant 19. Lemongrass. Lemongrass, the same aromatic grass that flavors Thai curries, Vietnamese soups, and herbal teas, grows in water from the base of a fresh store-bought stalk with a directness and ease that makes it one of the most satisfying edible water projects available. Take a whole stalk of fresh lemongrass, trim the top to about 6 inches above the base, and place the base in a glass with 2 to 3 inches of water, changing it every few days. Within 1 to 2 weeks, the base produces small, pale green roots and new grass-like growth from the center of the stalk. The aromatic compounds in lemongrass, citronelle and geraniol, are present in the new water-grown growth in the same concentrations as soil-grown lemongrass. A glass of rooting lemongrass on a kitchen windowsill fills the surrounding air with a fresh, citrusy fragrance that is both pleasant and practically useful. One thing beginners get wrong is purchasing dried or processed lemongrass rather than fresh. Dried stalks will not root. The stalk must be genuinely fresh, with the base still pale and slightly soft rather than completely dried and papery for water rooting to work. Plant 20. Water lily, Nymphaea. If there is one plant that defines the beauty of a water garden, it is the water lily. The floating circular pads, the flowers, white, pink, yellow, red, or purple, that open in the morning and close in the afternoon. The root system, anchored in submerged containers, while the leaves and flowers float on the surface, supported by nothing but the water beneath them. Water lilies are rooted aquatics. They anchor in soil at the base of the pond or in submerged containers with stems that extend upward through any water depth to bring leaves and flowers to the surface. Hardy varieties, Nymphaea alba, Nymphaea odata, and the Marliac hybrids are cold tolerant to zone 4 and return year after year, dying back in winter and re-emerging in spring from their rhizomes. Plant water lilies in aquatic planting baskets filled with heavy clay-based soil, not standard potting mix which floats. Full sun is essential. Water lilies will not flower in shaded ponds. One thing beginners get wrong is placing too many water lilies in a pond. The pads should cover no more than 50 to 60% of the water surface, leaving the rest open for gas exchange, for viewing the pond below, and for the other aquatic plants that share the space. Plant 21. Lotus, Nelumbum. The lotus is perhaps the most culturally significant plant in human history. Revered in Hindu, Buddhist, and ancient Egyptian traditions as a symbol of purity and enlightenment, rising clean from the mud of a pond floor to produce flowers of extraordinary beauty above the water surface. And that biology is not merely symbolic, it is literally what the plant does. Lotus plants root in the sediment at the bottom of a pond or a large submerged container and produce long, flexible stems that carry leaves and flowers to the surface and above it. The leaves are remarkable, large, circular, and covered with microscopic waxy bumps that make them super hydrophobic. Water drops bead perfectly on the lotus leaf surface and roll off, carrying dirt particles with them. This self-cleaning mechanism, called the lotus effect, has inspired biomimetic engineering applications in waterproof coatings and self-cleaning surfaces worldwide. Full sun, warm water. Lotuses do not begin growing until the water temperature reaches around 65 degrees Fahrenheit. Dwarf varieties like Nelumbum Small World and Baby Call are sized for half-barrel water gardens. Standard varieties need a full-sized pond. One thing beginners get wrong is purchasing lotus rhizomes and then breaking the growing tip accidentally in planting. The lotus rhizome has a delicate growing point at one end that must be handled carefully and positioned without pressure. Damage to this point ends the plant's growth before it begins.
Plant 22. Water hyacinth, Eichhornia crassipus. Water hyacinth is the plant that divides opinion among water gardeners more than any other on this list. In closed, managed water gardens and ponds, it is one of the most beautiful and most ecologically useful floating plants available. In natural waterways in tropical and subtropical regions, it is one of the world's most destructive invasive species, capable of forming dense mats that block sunlight, deplete oxygen, and halt boat traffic on major rivers. That contrast is important to name clearly. Water hyacinth is invasive in Florida, Texas, California, and many tropical and subtropical regions worldwide. Before growing it, check your local regulations. In many areas, it is illegal to introduce it to any natural waterway, and in some regions, possession itself is restricted. In a contained, enclosed pond or water feature with no connection to natural waterways, however, water hyacinth is extraordinary. The floating rosettes of glossy, round leaves are beautiful year-round. In summer, it produces spikes of lavender and violet flowers that are among the most striking of any aquatic plant. Its root system is remarkably efficient at absorbing excess nutrients, particularly nitrogen and phosphorus, making it one of the most effective natural water filtration plants available. One thing beginners get wrong is underestimating the growth rate. In warm, nutrient-rich water and full sun, water hyacinth can double its mass in 2 weeks. In a small pond, remove excess plants regularly throughout the growing season to prevent the surface from becoming completely covered.
Creeping Jenny, Lysomachia nummularia. And here we arrive at the final plant, the one that most people have walked past 100 times without ever realizing that what looked like an ordinary trailing ground cover is, in the right conditions, a fully capable water plant, one that grows along the edge of ponds and streams with its stems trailing into the water and its roots anchoring in the wet bank soil, perfectly at home in both worlds simultaneously. Aurea, the golden-leafed variety, is the most widely grown form, producing lime-yellow foliage that brightens any setting and catches the light in a way that the green species does not. In a pond, it cascades over the edge and trails into the water, softening the hard line between pond edge and water surface in a way that makes the whole feature look more natural and more established. Hardy to zone 3, full sun to full shade, small star-shaped yellow flowers in early summer. One thing beginners get wrong is planting creeping jenny in an open garden bed without monitoring it. It spreads aggressively through moist ground and can become invasive in some regions. In a pond setting, the water controls its spread naturally. In an open garden bed, it requires regular trimming. Check your regional invasive species guidance before planting it in the ground. And that is the plant that takes us to the end of this list. What this list actually represents is a shift in how you think about where plants live. We grow up learning that plants need soil, and that is true for most plants. But for these 30, soil is either optional, unnecessary, or something they evolved to specifically avoid. They did not adapt to water, they were built for it. A pothos trailing from a glass vase on a desk, roots visible through the glass below the waterline. A jar of mint on the kitchen windowsill that gets harvested into dinner 3 nights a week and grows back by the weekend. A half-barrel water garden on the patio with a dwarf water lily, a few stems of pickerel rush, a trailing creeping jenny at the edge, and the occasional dragonfly pausing on the papyrus. These are all the same idea expressed at different scales. Living plants growing in water, doing what they were designed to do. None of it requires garden space. None of it requires soil. None of it requires significant investment. It requires the willingness to try something that looks too simple to work, and then watching it work anyway. Which of these 30 plants are you going to try first? Drop your answer in the comments, and tell me, do you already grow anything in water? What has worked for you, and what has not? The conversation in the comments on this video is going to be one of the most useful this channel has produced, because water growing covers such a wide range of climates, spaces, and plant types that the community experience here is invaluable for everyone watching. If this video gave you 30 new ideas and the science behind each one actually works, hit the like button. It helps this channel reach more gardeners who are ready to think differently about what a garden can be. Subscribe if you are not already here, and drop your country in the comments. Let's see where this community is growing from. Keep growing your smart garden. I'll see you in the next one.